1991, U.S., 1992, India, originally published as Ice Candy Man, 1988, England, is a novel by author Bapsi Sidhwa. The story of the upheaval of the 1947 partition of India seen through the eyes of a Parsi girl growing up in Lahore. Through her relationships with her Hindu ayah, the Muslim cook, the Sikh zoo attendant and the Ice Candy Man, she shows how ordinary citizens reacted to the horrific turmoil. Bapsi Sidhwa, Urdu. Born 11 August 1938, Isa Pakistani novelist of Gujarati Parsi. Zoroastrian descent, too, who writes in English and is a resident in the United States. She is best known for her collaborative work with Indo-Canadian filmmaker Deepa Mehta. Sidhwa wrote both the 1991 novel Ice Candy Man, which served as the basis for Mehta's 1998 film Earth, as well as the 2006 novel Water, a novel on which Mehta's 2005 film Water is based. A documentary about Sidhwa's life called Bapsi, Silences of My Life, is released on the official YouTube channel of the Sitai's Archive of Pakistan, on the 28th of October 2022 with title, First Generation Stories of Partition, Bapsi Sidhwa. Summary. Setting, Lahore. Time, 1943-1948. This novel is generally referred to as a story about the partition of India, hence the title, but its original title was Ice Candy Man, which allows for broader interpretation of the story. The plot involves Lenny, a 4-year-old Parsi girl who recounts her childhood memories after she is struck by polio in her infancy. She spends most of her time with her ayah Shanta, an 18-year-old Hindu girl from Amritsar. Their relationship is the main narrative because Lenny spends a lot of time with her ayah and she learns a lot about adult relationships from being with the voluptuous nanny and her very diverse group of admirers. Sexual awakening is a major theme of the book, but so is communal identity, as the story takes place between 1943 and 1948 when India gained independence but was split into two countries. Aya's admirers are a cross-section of the Lahore residents before partition. Lenny has a lot of female relatives and this novel has a plethora of characters, but Aya is the one she is most intimate with. Partition does not really affect Lenny until, during the chaos of 1947, she accidentally betrays Aya's presence in the house and Aya is carried off by an angry Muslim mob. The tone of the novel, written almost completely in the present tense, is rather caustic and remote, much like the relationship between the children and their parents. This distance is enforced by the fact that in a couple of passages the writer reveals that she conjured up this little girl in her memories 40 years after they happened. The consistent use of the present tense makes the memories extra vivid, but the insights, the language and the humor are not always those of a little girl. Only the stories the adults tell Lenny in a special section called Rana's story are written in the past tense. Rana's story is the grueling report on how the great-grandson of Imam Din, the family cook, whom Lenny met on a visit to his village, witnessed the murder of his entire village and barely escaped alive. The telling of it is the more striking because of the change of voice, as the extreme violence would be hard to convey through the eyes of an 8-year-old girl who was not there. Once partition and Pakistan become the new reality, the children worry about what may have become of Aya. Lenny's mother and aunt are involved in taking care of fallen women, victims of the violence, now rejected by their families. Then they see Aya in a car, dressed up and made up like a Bollywood star. They find out that she is living in the Kota, the disreputable part of the old city, with Ice Candy Man, one of her former admirers who has now transformed himself into an Urdu poet but pimps her out and represses Aya ruthlessly. Lenny's godmother intervenes and they extricate Aya from her captivity in order to let her return to her family village. The book is made up of many lively and interesting anecdotes, some of them related to partition, but just as many to Lenny's personal development and the unique position of the Parsis in Lahore and in India. Some of the chapters carry forward the plot, but many of them do not, but they leave an indelible impression of a community in a place that was permanently transformed in a matter of months. The family. Lenny's parents, the Sethis. Adi, her younger brother. Electric aunt, she does everything at the speed of lightning. Cousin, her son and close friend to Lenny. Godmother, Rhoda, and her old husband. Slava, sister or mini auntie, sister of godmother whom she treats like a servant. Dr. Manik Modi, brother-in-law of godmother who lives in Rawalpindi. The servants. Imam Din, the family cook. Rana, his great-grandson from the village. Hari, the gardener who becomes Muslim and changes his name to Hiram Ali. The sweeper family, Modi, Mucho and their much-abused daughter Papu. Hamida, the new ayah recruited from the house for fallen women. The neighbors and other locals. Ice Candy Man, Aya's admirer who keeps her in captivity after she leaves the family. The Shankars, the newlyweds. Rosie and Pete and their Sikh father and American mother. Inspector General Rogers and his wife. Colonel Barucha, surgeon and leader of the Parsi community. Mr. and Mrs. Penn, Anglo-Indian couple who tutor Lenny's schoolwork. Aya's admirers. Masoor, Chinaman, government house gardener, Ramazan the butcher, Sher Singh, the zookeeper, wrestler who owns the restaurant, Sharbat Singh the Pathan, the knife sharpener. There are some parallels between the novel and Sidhwa's own life. Similar to the main character Lenny, Sidhwa is Parsi, contracted polio as a child, grew up in Lahore, and was 9 years old during the partition of India. Although she did not witness mob violence firsthand, she heard mob chanting in the distance and saw a few corpses during the conflict. 2-4 Additionally, the scene in which Aya's lover is found in the road reflects one of Sidhwa's real memories from the time. I was actually walking to my private tutor, and there was this gunny sack lying by the roadside. The gardener, who was with me, just kicked the gunny sack, and a body spilled out, a dead body of a very good-looking man. When the movie adaptation of the novel, Earth, was being filmed, the crew consulted Sidhwa's memory of the incident to recreate this scene. The novel Cracking India, first published as Ice Candy Man in 1980, by Bapsi Sidhwa, explores the civil war that occurred during the partition of India in 1947. The political and social upheaval engendered by independence and partition included religious intolerance that led to mass violence, killings, mutilations, rapes, dismemberments, and the wholesale slaughter of infants, children, men, and women, along with the displacement of millions of refugees, Hindus fleeing to India and Muslims fleeing to Pakistan. Told from the first-person perspective of Lenny Sadie, a Parsi child who is about 4 years old when the novel begins and approximately 10 years old at the end, the novel portrays the complicated and shifting political and social ramifications of the partition of India into two countries, a Hindu-majority India and a Muslim-majority Pakistan. Lenny and her family attempt to quietly endure the partition that transforms Lahore, India into Lahore, Pakistan in August 1947. Simultaneously, the novel operates as a coming-of-age novel delineating the parallel growth and formation of identity within the protagonist, Lenny, and the country, Pakistan. Both suffer severe growing pains, as Lenny's childlike vision becomes a quickly maturing voice reporting upon the violence she witnesses, the many friends who are lost, the friends who were betrayed by their former friends and neighbors due to religious differences, and the terrible human cost of dividing one country into two along brutally enforced religious lines. Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, and Parsis all vie for survival. As a minority group, the Parsi people first seek alliance with other ethnic groups to help protect them, but then quickly resolve to stay on the sidelines of the growing battle, hoping to hide in plain sight. In fact, Lenny's idyllic childhood, during the first third of the novel, serves as an idealistic backdrop, displaying the ethnic and religious harmony that existed in Lahore prior to the independence and partition of India. Lenny's pampered, secure childhood mirrors the peace that precedes the slaughter of partition. This peaceful coexistence highlights the later terrors of religious intolerance. In this way, Sidhwa unfolds the macrocosm of the Civil War through the microcosm of Lenny's life. Other parallels also link private life with the larger world. Lenny's nursemaid, Aya attracts a multi-ethnic crowd of admirers that mirrors the complex ethnic compositions of both India and Pakistan. The breakdown of Pakistani and Indian society into violent ethnic and religious groups mirrors the breakdown of the previously harmonious relationships between ethnicities and religions in Lenny's world. The novel's themes explore human understanding of being both a social insider and a social outsider depending upon a person's caste, religion, ethnicity, and economic status. It also examines the experience of being handicapped, the effects of religious and racial conflicts, the subjugation of women through arranged child marriages and prostitution, obsessions with sexuality, and the dangers of politically motivated violence. By using a child for the novel's narrative voice and perceptions, Sidhwa confronts the histories of India and Pakistan and their social, historical, and political complexities with humor and compassion. However, Lenny's childhood contains many horrors once partition occurs. These horrors culminate with the ultimate dreadfulness of her own betrayal of her beloved Aya to the ice candy man and his Muslim thugs. Even her family is confounded by her action, she can barely forgive herself. The last third of the novel demonstrates the united efforts of Lahori women, across ethnic and religious lines, to repair some of the damage perpetrated during partition and its aftermath. Since parents hide painful truths from their children, and Lenny has proven that she cannot be trusted, Lenny's mother hides her own secret work, which involves dangerous, illegal trade on the black market to earn money used to rescue women from enforced prostitution and sex slavery. Lenny only learns about this work near the end of the novel, when her godmother demonstrates her power and authority by locating and stealing Aya back from the ice candy man. Lenny's mother's work enables them to send Aya back home to her family in Amritsar, India. Perhaps the novel's most hopeful sign for the future of Pakistan is that these women come together to help one another, regardless of ethnicity or religion. Course: Indian Writing in English. 12 documents. Info. Report document. Beta. An analysis of Bapsi Sidhwa's novel, Ice Candy Man. About Bapsi Sidhwa. Bapsi Sidhwa, a well-known Pakistani Parsi author, has carved out an excellent position for herself in the literary world today. She has demonstrated that her experience as a member of a small Parsi community in Pakistan, far from being an obvious stumbling block in her creative process, provides her with enough to appreciate her gift. It has given her a distinct sense of detached attachment to her country and its people, she believes. Her creative journey, which began with The Crow Eaters 1978, has progressed with pieces such as Pakistani Bride 1983, Ice Candy Man 1988, and An American Brat 1989. 1994. Ice Candy Man. Ice Candy Man Cracking India 1988, Bapsi Sidhwa's third and most acclaimed and extensively quoted novel, is one of the most powerful narratives of recent times. Through the eyes of an 8-year-old crippled girl named Lenny, the novel recounts one of the most pivotal times in India and Pakistan's history, partition, in a very captivating way. The novel is an imaginative response to the traumatic events of India's partition in 1947, and Sidhwa has used surrealistic techniques to make it an adequate symbol for the effect of external events on human beings, writes Tariq Rahman in a review. Ice Candy Man is a novel in which heartbreak coexists with slapstick, and jokes give way to lines of glowing beauty. The moonlight descends like a layer of ashes over Lahore, writes Sliashi Taror, a prominent columnist and author. The author's ability to realistically bring a variety of personalities to life is impressive. Bapsi Sidhwa has given us a memorable work, one that affirms her position as Pakistan's finest English-language novelist, by reducing the partition to the views of a polio-ridden child, a girl who wants to pull out her tongue since it is unable to lie. Lenny's growth from childhood to adolescent parallels India's struggle for independence from Britain and the country's partition into India and Pakistan. The intricately linked narratives provide tremendous meaning to each other. Partially as a result of, Lenny is from a Parsi family, a religious and ethnic minority that has remained largely neutral in post-partition religious strife. She knows individuals of various nationalities and religions in Lahore and beyond. More importantly, she has access to a wide range of perspectives, both pre- and post-partition, thanks to her Aya, a beautiful woman with a wide range of suitors from many ethnic and religious backgrounds. Little Lenny watches the clamorous horrors of partition from the lap of her lovely Aya, or holding her skirts as Aya is followed by her suitors through the fountains, cypresses, and marble terraces of the Shalimar Gardens. The year is 1947. Lenny resides in Lahore with her large Parsi family, which includes her mother, father, brother Adi, cousin, electric aunt, godmother, and Slava sister. Butcher, the puny Sikh zoo attendant, the government house gardener, the favored masseur, the restaurant-owning wrestler, and the shady ice candy man, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Hindus, friends and neighbors, are working for them or panting after Aya until the ribald, everyday world disintegrates before the violence of religious hatred. The plot. The plot is around Lenny's passionate love for Aya and the loss of innocence that comes with their developing relationship as the partition progresses. The work is also about Lenny's interactions with her mother, her domineering godmother, and her sexually invasive cousin. Polio is a crucial early plot line for Lenny. The shifting relationship of Lenny's parents, the death of a British official, Rama's tragic story, and the child marriage of Papu, the much-abused daughter of one of Lenny's family's workers, are all small but interesting subplots. Symbols. In this symbolic novel, Sidhwa's concentration is not so much on the tale as it is on the narrative strategies, which all add to the overall effect of the work. The first-person present-tense narration is the most common. When the events described occur, Lenny is, or was, a child, and the events are perceived through her consciousness, with the present tense conveying immediacy and a sense of simultaneity between past and present. The narrator learns a lot about human deceit by the end of both stories, mostly via the influence of external circumstances. Lenny learns about the perverse nature of romantic human desires through her cousin, who pursues her with a zeal only equaled by ice candy pursuit maves of Aya. The slaughter of Hindus in Lahore and Muslims in Punjab by Sikhs exemplifies how religious fanaticism can engender hatred and bloodshed. The story of Lenny's buddy Rana, a horrifying picture of the human crimes that can be performed when all civilized restraints are removed through external circumstances or political propaganda, reflects the dehumanizing impact of community riots. Main character. Bapsi Sidhwa chose Lenny, a polio-infected, precocious child, as the novel's narrator because she allows her to recount the events leading up to the horrific partition riots with maximum objectivity and without an air of propaganda. She also comes from a Parsi family, thus she is free of any religious or ethnic prejudice. She, like most children her age, has a tongue infected with the truth. In many ways, she mirrors her creator, who suffered from severe polio, which limited her usual movement and forced her to spend the most of her infancy under the care of an Aya, busy tenderly nursing her world of exquisite romances. Bapsi was the same age when the country was divided into two and witnessed the partition riots firsthand. I was a child then, she recalls. Even at the age of 7, the foreboding roar of faraway crowds was a constant in my awareness, exposing me to a visceral feeling of the evil that was taking place in various sections of Lahore. My heart was ripped by the brilliance of fires beneath the push of smoke, which stained the horizon in a perpetual sunset. The brutality of partition eclipsed the British departure and the long-awaited independence of the subcontinent for many of us. The events of partition had left an indelible impression on Bapsi's psyche, prompting her to unburden herself from the traumatic events of those days. In actuality, Lenny is the personae, expressing the author's inner desire. I'm establishing a sort of truthful witness, whom the reader can believe. Bapsi Sidhwa explains why she chose Lenny as the novel's narrator. Lenny is maturing at the same time, learning, experiencing, and arriving to her own opinions. Though it may seem risky to associate the narrator with the author, the parallels between the two at various points in the narrative appear to be deliberate rather than coincidental, because the novel is as much about personal history as it is about memory and imagination. As she reveals in an interview, the scene where people ride into the house to kidnap Aya did happen in real life, Although I have fictionalized it, the author has no concealment about her relationship with the narrator. Lenny is the protagonist in Ice Candy Man. Her story begins in her 5th year and finishes after she turns 8. She passes pushing my pram with the unconcern of the Hindu goddess she worships. She recounts her first conscious memory of her ayah. She also recalls her home on Lahore's Waris Road, and how she used to seek refuge in her godmother's 1.5-room abode, to escape the gloom and perplexing unrealities of home. Her own polio, which she uses as a shield against a pretentious world, her mother's extravagance, her father's disapproval of it, and her attempt to fill the infernal silence during her father's mute meals by offering laughter and longer chatter, is that when I learned to tell tales. Among her perplexities, the household staff is equally perplexed by these issues. It includes her very dear ayah, an 18-year-old dusky beauty, Shantha, Imam Din, the Sadie household's genial-faced cook, Hari, the high-caste Hindu, Modi, the outcast gardener, Mucho, his shrew of a wife, Papu, his much-abused child, and the Ice Candy Man, a raconteur and a born gossip, who never stops touching Aya with his Lenny keeps us going by focusing on interesting data interspersed with poetic phrasing. Aya is at the center of the important events, which include the conclusion of World War II, India's independence, and the partition of the subcontinent into Pakistan and India. She is a symbol of larger-than-life realism, truly perplexing, much like India itself. Beggars, holy men, hawkers, cart drivers, chefs, coolies, and cyclists all yearn after her, according to Lenny. Isn't India a much-looted country that is finally being forced to start over? The novel maintains our interest on both a personal and political level as a result of these growing connotations. A psychoanalysis of characters. For Lenny, an entire universe, which is also her world, undergoes a major change marked by blood-dimmed anarchy in just a few years. Her attention shifts from her own sense of inadequacy and UII worth, and the trivia and trappings of her studies to the dark and scary world beyond. She notices the rapid, unstoppable, and violent changes that leave her and others around her, particularly Aya, wounded in the soul, with increased perception. Action, passion, contemplation, feeling, even the unconscious mind find place in a novel, according to Iyengar. Different colors of human cognition, sentiments, and behavior are accurately voiced in Sidhwa's story. Every character in the narrative gives us a glance into his inner sanctum, and we are constantly shocked by what we see. Bloodshed and murder are depicted in passages that highlight humanity's brutal side. The mob becomes maniac after Master Tara Singh's stirring speech against Punjab separation. The cops were also targeted. Then there's the raging fire in Lahore. Lenny observes, the entire world is on fire. My face is sweltering from the heat of the air. My flesh and clothing appear to be on fire. I start yelling and wailing hysterically. How long will Lahore burn? Weeks. Months. The workings of the local mind are brilliantly illustrated by Sidhwa's ingenious use of diverse devices in this tale. Through her dreams, witticisms, descriptions of individuals, their habits, and moods and idioms and metaphors, both native and alien, she tells us how little Lenny's mind sees, grasps, and ponders over the world around her. The whole fate of an enslaved country is depicted in the line Queen Victoria's statue imposes the English Raj in the park. Prior to the clash, Muslims and Sikhs coexisted peacefully. They enjoyed each other's festivals, such as Baisakhi and Eid, and took part in them. One man's religion is another man's poison, he said once the great turmoil started. The Radcliffe Commission deals out Indian cities like a pack of cards, causing and exacerbating the conflict between the two countries. And at the conclusion of a dreadful day, the moonlight settles over Lahore like a layer of ashes. In addition to idioms that evoke a terrible national tragedy, Bapsi Sidhwa employs devices such as nightmares, bathroom humor, poetry by the popular Urdu poet Iqbal, Parsi entry into India, their customs, prayers, fire temples, and funerals in towers of silence, elaborate discussions and debates on national politics by the haves and have-nots, Detailed accounts of villages such as Pir Pindo inhabited by people of various religions. Everything is mediated via Lenny's consciousness as the story progresses. Her fascination with the world around her is abnormal, as we find her filming everything like a video camera. Her emotions are unrestricted, and she appears to be enjoying everything that is going on around her. She can go to a Parsi conference to discuss the next course of action in the aftermath of partition hostilities, as well as linger around parks, cheap hotels, and other public locations with her ayah to get a sense of popular opinion. She is loved and cared for by all because of her physical impairment and precocious temperament, and even her parents do not place restrictions on her. Imam Din even allows her to accompany him on his visits to Pir Pindo, a Punjabi village. This visit allows her to meet Rama, the youngster who later becomes a weapon in the novelist's hands, detailing the events of barbaric cruelty perpetrated on Muslims across the border by the Sikhs, thus corroborating Lenny's version of partition. Narrative and style. Bapsi Sidhwa's narrative design in the novel appears to be very basic and easy at first glance, but a closer examination reveals that its simplicity is only misleading. Despite the fact that Lenny is the main narrator, the voice that emerges from the story is far from monologue. It's difficult for the readers to believe that a tiny child like Lenny can say the things that have been forced into her mouth at times. As an example, consider the following: the noxious odor has me enslaved. It's dissipated into a hazy haze. I float about in circles, up and down, and plummet great distances without ever landing, fighting for my life's breath. I'm choking in that stifling haze. My ghastly voice transforms me into something disgusting and scary, deserving of the heinous punishment. But where am I, exactly? I'm not sure how long the horror will last. Days and years pass with no sign of an end in sight. My nose inhales the scents of dirt and grass, as well as another scent that elicits thoughts. Things have meaning and purpose for me. The enigmatic rhythms of creation and death. The epitome of beauty and truth. I remember the choking hell of milky vapors and am surprised to learn that heaven has a black scent. Passages like this draw the reader's attention to the author's presence in the kid, with Lenny expressing her adult reactions to her juvenile situation. Sidhwa, of course, narrates the novel in the first person, placing everything in the mouth of the kid protagonist, but one thing is certain, she does so with serious intent. She doesn't want to come across as political or provocative, but she can't stop herself from presenting the other side of the truth about the partition riots. The Pakistani are, in her own right, the neutral point of view. It's another thing when she abandons even the dignity and decorum of a literary artist in order to exploit the emotions of millions of people, as evidenced by her observations and remarks regarding Nehru and Gandhi. Lenny's thoughts on Gandhi are as follows. He's frail, black, and shriveled, and he's elderly. He has the same appearance as Hari, our gardener, except he is angry, disgusted, and impatient, and no one would try to take off his dhoti. His black and slender torso is exposed, and he just wears a loincloth. Gandhiji is unquestionably a forerunner of his time. He is already aware of the benefits of dieting. He's created headlines all over the world by starving himself into the press. Despite several flaws, such as the one mentioned above, it goes without saying that no other novel captures India's centuries-old ways of living with religious difference before partition as well as this one. Lenny is observant and takes note of everything: clothes, fragrances, color, skin patina, sex everywhere, and eyes, olive oil-colored, cunning eyes, scared eyes. Sidhwa gives us the seedbed of the partition massacres, and mistreated untouchable, the ritual disemboweling of a goat, a priest trembling over the hand of a menstruating woman, in prose that is frequently poetic, always delicate and brilliant, with a subtlety here, a touch there. This amusing, sweet story, told through the eyes of a child, is a tribute to searing grief and a superb evocation of religious intolerance's lurking origins. Though some ardent Indian nationalists have accused Bapsi of presenting a Pakistani perspective on history, we must remember that this is a novel, not a work of social documentation. It is limited to one child's perspective through which the dissenting, disagreeing voices she hears are refracted, and, as Amr Hussein puts it, insofar as a novel can be objective, Bapsi is in the grand tradition of the progressive writers on both sides. Indeed, Bapsi's point of view is one of the novel's most successful ploys. We believe we are witnessing the events of partition through the eyes of a child, but strategically placed flashbacks reveal that the adult Lenny is actually reliving the past in order to make sense of the events that perplexed her when she was too young to comprehend. Simultaneously, she confines herself to the experiences and sensory perceptions of the child she was. As a result, we're offered a dual, even dialogic, perspective that layers innocence over experience, introspection over retrospect.